Good morning. My name is Barbara Fair, and I'm a member of the Steering Committee for Stop Solitary, an organization with a mission to shift the culture of corrections in Connecticut toward uplifting the human dignity of all incarcerated people, people whom will return to their homes and their communities. And we would like for them to return as functioning human beings, whole and not broken in spirit and mind. If we care about public safety like we profess, then the PROTECT Act is the way that we want to go. And because we actually seem to need that to guide us in that direction. We are here on what ironically is celebrated as the International Day of Freedom, a day that was established 156 years ago in a joint resolution signed by Abraham Lincoln that actually talked about America being a symbol of liberty. It was also a resolution to outlaw slavery, which is the 13th Amendment. When you look at where America really is today, we incarcerate more people than anywhere else in the world. And we look at the 13th Amendment, which has an exception clause that allows slavery to continue as long as people are incarcerated. Then we have to think that International Day of Freedom for America is a farce and just a document of hollow words. And so despite that recognition, we're here today, people of conscience, legislators, parents, formerly incarcerated, and other supporters like Connecticut ACLU and CATAL. We're here to turn those hollow words into what America, freedom, and liberty actually should look like. Now, the PROTECT Act is the acronym for PROTECT Act. For those who don't know, is promoting responsible oversight, treatment, and effective correctional transparency. And what we look for in the PROTECT Act is one, stop extreme isolation. That means being locked up in the cell for 22 hours a day by international law is torture. By whatever name we'd like to give it, that's what it is. Solitary confinement, by whichever name we want to give it, is torture. Number two, we want to end abusive restraints. 3, protect social bonds. In that we mean that people should be able to have free calls, free letters, and visits. Number 4, protect officer wellness. We understand that being in this kind of environment, people may come into the department to do the right thing. And then what ends up happening because of the culture that they're in, many times they turn out to be entirely different people. And so we want to make sure that they're well, because if they're not well, then that means they abuse the people that are there. And that's the one thing we definitely don't want. Another thing we want to do is shut down Northern, the Supermax. We want that done by the end of this year, December 2021. Northern is located in Somers, Connecticut. It's a place condemned by the United Nations. It's a place where men are sent to break their spirit, which in effect shatters their minds. It is barbarism, is where barbarism lives. And sanctioned and tolerated by the state. It's a place that should shock the conscience of any human being. And then finally, we want independent oversight and accountability. We had a no ops busman at one time. It was written out of the budget. It's very much needed. We have so many lawsuits right now because there's no oversight. People are losing their lives and we're not even sure why because there's no oversight. Almost every department that I know of, state institution, has an oversight committee. And why Department of Correction doesn't have that, I'm not sure, but it's something that we definitely have to have. So that's what we talk about when we talk about the PROTECT Act. That's all we're asking for, things that we should all want. So this morning you're going to hear from several people. You're going to hear from some of our moms who have people in prison. You're going to hear from Kevnisha Boyd, who is another committee member. She's going to talk to you about the petition that we have today that we're going to send to the governor. We have legislators and people of conscience just wanting to make sure that International Day of Freedom actually is no longer just a hollow document. And next, I'm going to turn the mic over to Kevnisha Boyd, who will announce the results of our petition that we plan to present to the governor today. And you're also going to hear from legislators and moms, one who worries about her son recently transferred from Northern to McDougall. And then finally, from a mom who faced the ultimate tragedy of coping with the loss of her son who died in a New Haven jail in restraints and solitary confinement. I'm turning the mic over to Kevnisha Boyd now. Kevnisha Boyd, thank you. And thank you all for being here today.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Barbara, for that beautiful introduction. So before I get into the petition, I do want to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Kevnisha Boyd. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and steering committee member of Stop Solitary CT. I've always wanted to help people heal, specifically those impacted by the criminal justice system. Securing my dream job at Department of Corrections as a mental health counselor wasn't what I was hoping for. I started to lose my morals, integrity, and my sanity. I didn't realize how traumatizing my job there was until it started to make me physically and mentally ill. In March of 2019, Robbie Talbot was found dead in isolated confinement and restrained in chains. His death is one of the most horrific and motivating experiences of my professional career. You will hear from Robbie's mother, Colleen Lord, later this morning. Shortly resigning after his death, I hold no regrets with my career path, as witnessing the immoral practices and inhumane conditions led to my support of the PROTECT Act. As we fight for the well-being and humanity of incarcerated people, I call on your support. Isolated confinement and immoral practices is a public health issue. I call on all healthcare providers. Putting anybody in isolated confinement for an extended period of time is harmful and violates basic ethics of doing no harm. I call on the Black community and Latino communities. We are the targets and we are impacted the most. I call on all mothers. No mother should have to fight for the dignity and protection of their child during incarceration. I call on all legislators and all people in support as we fight to humanize the system. You can sign the petition in addition to the 1,000 other signatures of the Support Act at www.stopsolitaryct.org. You can go to the website and click on Act Now. You can't miss it. It's in red. You can access the petition on any mobile device. So I want to thank you for your time and your support in advance. And I'd like to hand the floor back over to our lead organizer, Barbara Fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevnisha, for giving us that very important information. And I'm hoping that people actually heard everything that you said and will support us in every way possible to bring humanity to the correction system. Next, we're going to hear from a mom who currently has a son who ended up getting COVID, and he's now at McDougall. Before that, he was in Northern. We'll be going back to Northern. So we just want to hear, from his mom, what it's like to have a son inside right now going through this. Miss Karen Colt.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Colt. My son Lee committed 2 robberies within 2 weeks in December of 2015 while he was addicted to opioids and was homeless. No one was injured, and he netted about $73 total. In October 2016, he was sentenced to a total of almost 5 years and remanded to McDougall as a level 4 inmate. In January of 2020, he was moved to a level 2 dormitory style facility, Carl Robinson, in order to transition to a halfway house in preparation for release this spring. At that point, well, in March, as we all know, COVID hit, but no one knew how contagious or deadly this virus could be. Quarantines were being put in place. The public was told to stay home, never leave the house without a mask, and stay 6 feet away from anyone outside your household. In March, prison visits were suspended. No new inmates were being brought in, leading to the logical conclusion the only way inmates could be exposed was via corrections officers who did not wear masks. Social distancing was not an option. They had no access to hand sanitizer, were not allowed to cover their faces. So if one inmate got it, then 100 would get it, and some, perhaps many, would surely die. On April 2nd, the warden and 2 deputy wardens came to the unit to listen to inmate concerns. My not so shy son asked them when they were going to address inmate safety and get PPE for the COs. 24 hours later, he and dozens of others in the facility were taken to Northern Correctional Institution for impeding an order and presenting a safety risk. Lee received no order and posed no risk. He was put in administrative segregation as a level 5 dangerous inmate, placed in a cell that had previously housed a death row inmate who was moved to make room for him. He lost 60 days time off his sentence for good behavior. He was really a dangerous inmate with 60 days of good time credit.
Yeah.
He was able to get the ticket overturned at hearing, yet the punishment stood despite his having no similar incidents and no history of violence in over 3 years of incarceration. So he's been at Northern since April of 2020, being treated the same as a death row inmate in solitary confinement. Initially just him and a radio in his cell, showers every 3 days with shackles in place. He's earned some privileges, but Lee will be returning home in 5 weeks. I can only imagine how difficult that transition will be after 11 months with no social interactions. He also was infected with COVID-19 2 weeks ago, which would not have happened had he not lost the 60 days of credit for good behavior. He already would have been home and able to take control of his own safety. In summary, it's incomprehensible to me that in the United States of America, men can be placed in extended solitary confinement for asking an authority figure difficult questions. No violence, no threats, just a request for a viable safety plan. My son got COVID-19 2 weeks ago, just weeks before his final release date, and could have died not having seen his 12-year-old son in 15 months and not having seen the sky in almost a year, just because he expected DOC to provide a safe environment and they failed. I thank you very much for your time, and I'm more than happy to provide further information, and I'm sure you know that there's plenty more behind a 3-minute story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Colt. And I just have to add that I've heard of other stories of people who were upset by the environment they were in. And when they questioned why COs were not wearing masks and talked about having a hunger strike, they were also sent to Northern. So thank you very much for your story. It just validated some of the other stories that I've already heard. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Gary Winfield, who is one of our most courageous and compassionate legislators that we have in Connecticut. And we just want to hear from him. And Gary, as always, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you do, because I know it's not easy.
Thank you, Barbara, and good morning to all. I don't have a story. I'm just a legislator who is concerned with what we are choosing to do to the people who we have responsibility for. When I look at the fight to end solitary that goes way back well before we were in a place where we had the PROTECT Act, it's frustrating. The things we're talking about get turned into whether these people deserve to be treated one way or the other. And really what the conversation really is about is are the people who are treating them a certain way. It's really about, do we deserve to keep these people in the conditions that they are? Do we deserve to be the people who oversee them? And if you're going to oversee people, and look, you're going to, right? We know there are going to be points where we oversee people. If you're going to oversee people, you have to be at your best, and the state isn't. The PROTECT Act is a reasonable piece of legislation, honestly. It says we don't want to put people into these conditions of isolation and segregation without having rules in place. And it thinks about some of the things that will happen in a prison. It thinks about when there's a facility-wide issue. It thinks about when there's substantial threats. So it takes those things into account. And I'm here to tell you that you will hear people try to turn this into something that it is not. Mm-hmm. It is a reasonable conversation. It is a conversation about asking ourselves, are we doing what we should be doing when we take on the responsibility of incarcerating people? And if you ask me, in some areas we do, and in some areas we don't. And when it comes to this issue, we haven't gotten it correct. Look, it's difficult to have a conversation about solitary confinement because there's data out there, but it's one of the hardest places to actually understand what's happening because the data is either self-reported or reported by the institution. And a lot of times when we want to look at the hard data, we forget that with solitary confinement, because of the fact that there are some unique aspects to it, we also have to give credence to those qualitative things, the interviews with the people who've experienced it. And when you talk to those people and you understand what's really going on here, that I can't imagine that any person of good conscience would want to do what we're doing. So I'm just happy to be here this morning to continue to support you, to thank you for your work. It is critical to making sure that Connecticut is a state where we are doing things not only in the way that we would like to, but in the way we have to, because those people will come back out into our communities, into our families, and they have impact on all of us. It's not isolated. Mm-hmm. These people are human beings who will come back out, engage with us, and the things that we've done to them inside that box will have impact on us, whether we recognize it or not. So again, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to do everything I can to help make this happen.
And thank you very much for that. Next, we're going to hear from Representative Steve Stafstrom. I hope I said it right.
Thank you, Barbara. Steve Stafstrom. I'm the House Chair of the Judiciary Committee. It is actually sort of unfortunate to have to be here this morning, continuing to advocate for an end to extreme forms of isolation and abusive restraint and treatment of our fellow human beings. Right before the pandemic hit, I had the opportunity to visit Northern and tour it. Northern Correctional is absolutely a relic of a very dark and barbaric period of tough on crime in our nation and in our state. It's a facility that literally was built to feel like the walls are caving in and there's no getting out. It was a temple to capital punishment, something that we have long rightly outlawed in this state. It is literally built to deprive someone of their dignity and their spirit. We in Connecticut in so many ways have shown it's important to be smart on crime as opposed to tough on crime. But Northern is basically the antithesis of all of the progress we've made in this state over the past decade or so. It's past time to close it, to demo it. And I look forward to continuing to work with the advocates here to improve conditions, rehabilitation, and outcomes for those within our Department of Corrections system. So thank you all for your advocacy.
And thank you very much. For those who don't know, Northern, actually the cost of it is over $17 million. There's only 80 people there. Almost 90% are Black and Latino. And I'm just grateful to hear Mr. Stafstrom say that demolition is part of that closing down Northern, because for me, I don't want to see Northern shut down and then the programming, because that's what it is, and the breaking down of people are not going to happen in just another facility. So I'm glad to hear that place will be completely gone. And for me, that'll be a big part of my healing after that place destroyed my young son. So thank you very much for that. Next, I want to bring up another courageous fighter in Hartford, and I'm just so thankful and grateful that you're there, Robyn. So I'm turning the mic over to you.
Thank you, Queen Barbara, and your team. The work that you guys do is phenomenal. You have been persistent, courageous yourself. I mean, all the accolades that you give to us, we have to give that back to you all, because we don't get to do this work without you. My mantra is teamwork makes the dream work. And this has been something, along with my colleagues, I have been fighting for since I've been in the building. I have not personally ever been incarcerated, but I have had a son, my one and only son, that was incarcerated. He did spend time in solitary confinement, SEG, whatever you want to call it. And I just want to touch on the fact that, when they're in solitary confinement or SEG, how they're not even allowed calls and visits. And we talk about, the social bonds and how important they are. And I just think that we go to the extreme to dehumanize people that are serving time for crimes that they've been convicted of. And I think the loss of freedom is enough, punishment, and not having to have the freedom to go about and do the things that you want to do. And solitary confinement is inhumane. I mean, the UN, we had an expert at the UN speak about Connecticut's use of solitary confinement and deemed it torture. So, I mean, the data, the research, the experts have all spoken on this matter. We know what it is. I, too, have visited Northern and actually went in for a tour and to visit an inmate that I was helping at the time. And like Representative Stafstrom said, it's an experience that I don't want to ever have to experience again. And I had the freedom to leave. And just the walk down the hallways, and it reminded me of the Green Mile, and just how mentally it damages you going in. I can't imagine doing the kind of time that people in Northern are doing under those circumstances. And the other thing that I will say that I find really disturbing and inhumane about it is, if we locked up animals the way that we're locking up people in prison, we'd all go to jail. And I will always stress that, because, it's just, to me, a detriment to society and humanity that we would put more worth on an animal's life and his quality of life as opposed to human beings. And it really does strip people of their humanity and their dignity. And there's so much work to be done around this. But as Senator Winfield said, this is nothing egregious. This is not anything that would compromise public safety. I think that it would actually help public safety, and not just when they're being released, but change the culture within the prison. I mean, we talk about, making sure that the correction officers are safe and their well-being is taken into consideration. They have to interact with these inmates. And until we change the culture in which that interaction is occurring, we're going to continue to feel a need for solitary confinement. And I think that it exacerbates, the conditions in which the people that are incarcerated have to live, and the people that work there, the correction officers, what they have to be exposed to. So it just makes sense, and there's no question about it. We're looking at budget deficits. We're looking at, money that we're going to need that's just not there. And of course, we're going to be looking to cut things like health education and healthcare. And I just don't think that that's fair. When you stated earlier, we're spending $17 million a year on a facility that is housing less than 100 inmates. You do the math. That doesn't make sense. And we're smarter than that. And we need to be smart about this. So I thank you again for your persistence and your commitment to this critical cause. I know that the parents, the families, the people that are in prison, thank you. I hear from them often, as I know you do. And I just want them to know that we're listening and we're doing everything we can to change the status quo, because it's time. The time is now to make a difference. And we can do something about the high fiscal and human costs that we're incurring in this state. And we can repurpose those dollars to make people better. We fall short, people make mistakes, but I don't believe that a person's past should define their present, and it surely shouldn't define their future. We should be doing everything we can to rehabilitate these folks and make sure that they have the tools necessary to come back better than when they went in, not worse. Because at the end of the day, it's coming home. And there are going to be no communities that are not going to have an impact, whether it's indirect or directly. So I hope that many people are listening today and that we will gain and garner the support needed to get this done this year. It needs to happen this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robyn, for that. I have to just quickly say before I bring on Mr. Phipps, is just in having this conversation, the picture that flashed in my mind that's deeply embedded in my psyche is the first time I went to visit my son in Northern, and they brought him out, shackled all up. It was like a scene from Roots, and that broke my heart. And that memory remains in my head. I can't get rid of it. And this is how they treat people, someone that I loved, someone I brought into this world. And this is what they did to him at 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So
it
thank
changed
you.
them forever.
Thank you.
Changed them forever. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Next, we want to bring up Quentin Phipps. Did I say it right?
Yes, Ms. Barbara, that's perfect.
Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. And this is also why you don't follow what's been three legends in the legislature and being the last one. But I appreciate the work that you all do. And I have to admit, one of the things that really got me passionate about this work was when you brought that replica cell to the Capitol. Little did I know, when I experienced, once again, a minuscule taste of what it was like, was that I had my own sort of undiagnosed mental health issue. I just recently, literally 2 months ago, 37 years old, was diagnosed with ADHD. Mm-hmm. And the impact that has on your ability to be in certain environments, the noises, the ideas of how much time has passed or not has passed, the hyper awareness, all those sort of things that I was experiencing in this, once again, the small little replica, and what kind of impact that had on me for, once again, the short 5 minutes that I was in there. I can only imagine the impact that it has on the countless folks that we do to this each and every day. The amount of our neighbors that are in these facilities that also have undiagnosed mental health issues. It is inhumane and barbaric, to say the least. And I'm sorry, I'm ashamed, and I will continue working to make sure that we change this. And once again, every time we share these sort of conversations, I can say that the hairs on my arms stand up and on the back of my neck, the feeling in your gut, trying to hold back the tears of knowing, as I said, Representative Porter has said, if we had treated a Black lab like this, they would throw you under the jail.
Mm-hmm.
And we do this to Black and brown folks each and every day. It's perverse. And it's about humanity, and it's about our collective humanity. It's about their humanity in experiencing these. It's about the humanity of those that are overseeing these facilities and what impact that has on them. And it has an impact on our humanity as a community and as a culture, and what it says about us, that we would treat our fellow human beings like this.
Mm-hmm.
It has to change immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I know we are all dedicated to moving forward. We're all dedicated to working to make sure this changes. But for now, I said, I will say again, I am sorry for this. And from that sorrow will come action, will come work, and will come change, because we cannot do this any longer for our own humanity.
Thank you so much for that. I'm inspired by that. And like you said, it has to stop now. We can't continue fighting for this, fighting for people's humanity. And we've been doing it for years now. It's time for it to end. No more excuses, no more misrepresenting facts. It needs to stop. And like you said, if it was happening to a Black lab, we'd be under the jail. Thank you. And then finally, we're gonna want to bring up Ms. Colleen Lord. I just want to thank this lady for her courage to be in these spaces, because I know what it does to me being in these spaces, and I still have my son. So the courage that it takes for you to stay in here, I'm just so grateful that you're on this journey with us. Miss Colleen Lord. We can't hear you. Oh. You can't, we can't hear you. I don't know. Well,
maybe she can go out and come back in.
can you, I don't know how to even get that to her if she can't hear us. Can you go out and come back in?
And she might want to try the dial-in feature when she calls back, when she comes back in, if it's an internet problem, because I know a lot of people, due to the weather, are having some unstable internet connections. And if that's what's going on, she should turn her video off and do the call-in option, like dial-in.
Did you hear us, Colleen? Yeah, that maybe you want to get off and then call in.
Yeah, I'm messaging her now.
Well, I know I'm not supposed to be speaking, but just to, fill up the silence or the awkwardness of trying to get this. When Mr. Phipps spoke about the replica cell, and he spoke about himself being diagnosed with ADHD and that effect, that's something that I myself, have never even thought of. And, I've been inside those walls myself. And there's a lot of, especially, Black and brown people And we're not discounting any issues that, Caucasian people may have or any other race. But, a lot of.
Okay, am I frozen on the screen?
Okay.
Okay. But that
Yeah,
was
we
just
hear you.
really touching. We can hear you.
What happened?
Hi, I don't know. I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Take
The
your
weather.
time.
My name is Colleen Lord. I add my voice and my son's silenced voice to those who say we need the PROTECT Act. You may already know about the homicide of my beloved son, Robbie, at the New Haven jail when he was sent for breach of peace instead of to a needed hospital bed. Next month, it will be 2 years since the Prince of New Haven, as he was sometimes called, died in great pain and injustice. But we've heard of no internal investigation by the DOC, no transparency and no consequences for the multiple guilty parties. Even the inadequate criminal charges against ex-Lieutenant Padro are repeatedly hung up in court. The PROTECT Act provides for oversight and transparency. Maybe you're like me, the privilege that I was born with prevented me from ever in a billion years imagining my own gentle son, that his last words would be, "I can't breathe," gulped out under the heavy weight of multiple correctional officers, brutally attaching ultra-tight 5-point restraints after mercilessly overdosing him with chemical agent and leaving him to die alone in a solitary confinement cell chained to a metal cot. The poison in the air was so strong that 2 hours later, it still affected the EMT workers who had come to take away my son's body, already in rigor mortis. The PROTECT Act would have saved Robbie from this horrifying homicide. Or maybe you're like some of my friends, born without privilege, who for their whole lives have imagined with terror this exact torture scenario happening to their children, already painfully aware that the majority of the victims of solitary confinement and chemical agent torture are there because of the color of their skin. Or maybe you're a state employee, bent under the pressure to withhold facts, falsify records, ignore brutality. Maybe your job is PR, to portray that this torture is only for the most extremely dangerous. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's routinely used even on the most meek and harmless prisoners, whether they have a mental illness, make the wrong joke, are too slow in the food line, or slow in the shower, like Robbie. Maybe you're a state employee who sees this extreme injustice and needs to be courageous and speak up. And thank you to those who already have. Maybe you're even one of those responsible for the death of my beautiful boy, who would never have harmed you, as you well know. I don't want you to be tortured for your crimes, as though under your care are. I want you to be rehabilitated in a meaningful way. I learned many years ago working in prayer ministry that hurt people hurt people. The PROTECT Act is also for you, DOC guards and medical staff. Or you might be a regular citizen, completely unaware that these atrocities are going on in this century. You hear about solitary and chemical agent and you think those prisoners must have been incredibly dangerous. You believe the PR. I get it. I used to believe it too. And I'm sorry. Ignorance, like I had, is a big part of the problem. Because awareness and good people can and they must ensure that our laws keep up with our knowledge of good and evil. Torture must never be tolerated. We're better than that. And so we need the PROTECT Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lord, for your, testimony. And like I always say, thank you for having the courage to continue to come into these spaces and tell your story and honor your son. And just know Stop Solitary will always be there for you also. I'm sure you already know that, but we will be. We will never forget Robbie and the many other unnamed people who have suffered the same consequence. Thank you so much. So I guess we're gonna go into question and answer session right now, but just before doing that, I want to take a moment to honor the 20 lives that have been lost during COVID-19. And although the newspapers say it's 19, it's actually 20. DOC hides the fact that a 26-year-old East Hartford dad died. His name was Caleb Jordan Martin. He died on April 15th, 2 days after being court released into a hospital. Otherwise, he would have died in his cell also. And so DOC strategically leaves him out, but 20 people have died in less than a year behind bars and COVID. And some of them have died before they were even convicted of anything. And so far, our governor has shown complete indifference to those lives. And I think that's something that we as voters need to hold him accountable for, why he has done absolutely nothing to save lives. I mean, they spin a story about, the population is down by 3,000 and try to pretend that it's because of compassionate release. And we know that most of those people were getting out prison anyway. It was not any strategic plan on the governor's part, even though they continue to spin that story and the media continues to spin that story. And I hope for once the media would tell the truth about what happened. It was no strategic, compassionate plan by our governor why 3,000 people are less in our population. And it also accounts for the fact that people are not going in the rate that they were. So I think we have a duty as voters who put Governor Lamont in office to demand accountability for his lack of indifference to incarcerated people. We hear all the time, criminal justice is not his thing. Well, I'm sorry, you're in office to take care of all of the issues, not just the things that seem to touch on you. And so I want to send that message out to him. And so I guess if there's nothing else that people want to say, that we can go into a Q&A session, and another member of our committee, Leighton Johnson, will take care of that part. And again, I want to thank everyone who showed up today.
Thank you, Ms. Barbara, and thank you, everyone who attended and who spoke, all the panelists, all the supporters, and for your words and your testimony. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and we have one from Ms. Elaine Daly, and she's saying, is there any work being done to get good time for people who are incarcerated with life sentences or long sentences? Because after 10 to 15 years, if a person has not changed, then that's a DOC or mental health problem that should be addressed. I don't know who would answer that question, but if anybody can, you have a space to do it now.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So we don't currently have a bill dealing with either the issue of good time or earned credits that would deal with the issue that Elaine Daly is asking about. And from time to time we make attempts to do something about this, both positive and negative. I do want to take an opportunity, because I don't know who's hearing this and who's going to see what we are saying. And I know that you all were recording earlier, and I think it's just important for people to know just how critical every single voice really is, because a lot of legislators just have no concept of what you're talking about. And I'll take you back to the cell that we brought in, right? Because it's a mock cell. It's not the same experience, but most legislators didn't spend the 5 minutes that Representative Phipps did in that cell. And there's a reason for that. Many people went into that cell, looked around, and didn't want to deal with that. And I think that's important, because these are the same people who have the ability to change the law, and some of them have opposed efforts in the past. And I think that lack of perspective has a lot to do with why we see what we see. They don't have family members who are in. They don't live in a place where the community is affected the same way by having the number of people who've been in, and they have chosen not to take advantage of the opportunity of that cell that we brought there. I'll tell you, I mean, some of you know I spent hours in that cell. And I didn't go in there with my cell phone and extra things. I went in there to try to have a little bit of that experience. And that's not something you want to do even in a mock cell. And so what becomes important is every opportunity we have for the story to be brought right to people's spaces where they are, to a place where they have to hear. When we're having the hearing, those stories are important because they're sitting there listening. And you just never really know what thing that someone says that someone connects to, or the fact that that person is sitting there and for some reason they remind them of, so you just don't know. And I know a lot of people throw their hands up because it seems like you're not making any progress. But those who have stories, I implore you to share, because you just don't know how important it could possibly be.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield. And just to real quick to finish my point from earlier, the fact that ADHD is something that's really, you know, a lot of Black and brown people, Caucasians as well, are, you know, diagnosed with. And that's something that, you know, the department obviously doesn't recognize or doesn't care or don't know how to, you know, address these type of mental illnesses or whatever you want to call them that people deal with. So let me, the next question we have from Miss Julie Kushner is Senator Kushner, excuse me. She said she will support these bills. I think this is a, you know, a comment. Thank you, Miss Barbara, and all the speakers who shared their experiences with us. Having knowledge of the impact of solitary confinement and the understanding of the PROTECT Act is critical. Thank you to my colleagues for championing these important issues. Thank you, Ms. Kushner, Senator Kushner. We have John Craven. John Craven said, what specifically will the PROTECT Act do? And is it already drafted as a bill? So, as Ms. Barbara.
Answer that?
Okay.
Well, I'll let you guys talk about it. It's your content. I'll let you talk about that. The language that you all had in your most recent version is with our attorney who's working on taking your language and making it comport with the way that we do things. So that effort's underway. And there have been people who've been asking, what's the bill number? Steve and I haven't actually signed it yet. So it doesn't hold a bill number currently, but through the ways that we get information out, and you all will have the number too, we'll help people to know what that is. And that should happen shortly.
And Gary, I just wanted to ask a question at this point too. How can we be assured, we at Stop Solitary be assured that by the time the bill comes out of the legislative, the lawyers, that the language won't be so watered down that we don't have anything? Because we've been down this road before where we sent a good bill through and by the time we got it, it was nothing.
Well, I will just say this, Steve and I weren't the chairs at that point. And that, you know, look, people, you've been through this process before. So the conversation about what the bill ultimately is going to be begins immediately. And sometimes the changes to the bill begin at the point where the drafting has happened. Sometimes it begins during and after the public hearing. Sometimes it's down the road. And all of that has an impact on what you're going to see and at what period. Sometimes some changes have occurred before you ever even get to the public hearing. What the attempt here is to do is to look at the language you all have and with very little changes that allow us to actually fit it into a statutory language, present that, and then from that point have the conversation. So that's the effort that we have underway, which means that it's more likely to hew to what you all are wanting than maybe sometimes in the past.
Steve, did you want to add anything?
No, Barbara, the only thing I would just say procedurally and back to, I think it's John Craven from News 12. I think you summarized the key points up front well. You may want to run through those again for his benefit and others. But just procedurally, the Judiciary Committee has voted to raise a concept on this. So there will be a bill, there will be a public hearing on that bill. The committee has already voted to do that. But the actual, as Gary said, the actual language has not been finalized yet, but should be in the next week or two. But I'll leave to you to summarize the high points of the bill, because I think you did it more articulately than I can.
I'll go over it again. The acronym for PROTECT Act is Promoting Responsible Oversight, Treatment, and Effective Correctional Transparency. And so what we're asking is to stop extreme isolation. Extreme isolation, it would be where a lot of these facilities are, where you're in your cell 22 hours or more a day. That needs to stop. End abusive restraints, protect social bonds. People should be able to get letters, phone calls, visits, even if they're in solitary. They still should be able to get some kind of connection to the outside world, because that adds to the trauma where they can't even hear from the people that they love to give them support. It also protects officer wellness, because we know if the officers are not well and they're going to bring that to their job, and then the incarcerated people are the ones who are going to be the brunt of whatever they're going through in their life. So we want to make sure that they are well. And we want to shut down Northern Supermax by the end of this year, 2021. Northern, for those who don't know, is the Supermax located in Summers. It's a place where the United Nations has condemned as practicing torture. It's a place where incarcerated men, over 90% are Black and Latino men, are sent to break their spirit, which in effect leaves their mind shattered. It's a place where barbarism lives, is tolerated and sanctioned by the state, and it's a place that should shock the conscience of any human being. And then finally, we want independent oversight, which we had at one time, where most prisons in most states have, and for some reason in Connecticut it was written out of the budget, but we need that oversight to provide a voice for the incarcerated people, any concerns or complaints they have, and to be able to have an entity that actually they can find some justice in, as opposed to what they have now, where most people know if they put in a complaint, it's not going anywhere. They need to know that if something's happening to them, that somebody's going to do something about it. And finally, in action for oversight, we have to look at all the other state institutions around Connecticut, and I can't think of one that doesn't have an oversight compartment. So why Department of Corrections feels the need not to have that is beyond my understanding. So that's it. I hope that helped.
Yes, that was very, very helpful, Ms. Barbara. Thank you. And for any press who wants any more specifics on the bill, you can reach our press contact, Mr. Joseph Galen, and you can be further educated on that piece. But let me see. We have some reporters who are asking questions. So we're gonna go with Emilia. Hope I'm saying your name right. She said, do we have any thoughts on changes that need to be made in terms of work programs? Are these programs giving individuals skills that they can use in the workforce when they return to the community? Are there education programs and mental health programs available? Just from my own experience, I'm not sure if there are any work programs. I know of one. I know of one that I was in, actually. Matter of fact, so let me go back on that. Emerge CT. I'm gonna shout out Emerge. which is a very impactful and entrenched in the work of trying to get people, jobs and hard skills so that they can use. But if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Sure,
I'll
jump
add
in.
to that.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Porter.
Okay. And it's just fresh on my mind because we actually just had a graduation. Jill Carbone and Adrian and their team are doing an excellent job. They have the Platform to Employment program, and they have actually expanded that to include a Platform to Employment reentry program. And they are doing astounding, even in the midst of a pandemic. They are bringing folks home, putting them into this program and giving them the social and life skills necessary and needed in order to, be productive citizens. And quite a few of them were actually absent from graduation because they actually are employed. So I would definitely tell anyone that knows anyone that's coming home to reach out to Joe Carbone and to inquire about, they call it P2E for short, but it's Platform to Employment, the reentry program.
Thank you.
Kevin, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I definitely know that there can be more mental health programs and community support programs for incarcerated people. Based off of the budget that DOC has posted for this year, they allocated $34 million to community support. So I think it's important and something that the accountability really can do is to make sure that that $34 million is accurately being dispersed and used for issues and services that are really going to address the root issues of people that are incarcerated.
And I'll just add to that real quick, Ms. Barbara, that, that is so important. We don't talk about the urban trauma, right? We deal with the symptoms. We have people that believe we need more police in our communities.
Right.
And I totally disagree with that. We need quality education. We need sustainable, livable wages. We need community centers and things to keep our children occupied so that they don't have time for the devil's playground. Mm-hmm. So thank you for bringing that up, Kanisha, because that is absolutely the key, dealing with the root cause. We know if you don't pluck it from the root, it's like a weed, it will grow back. Mm-hmm. And if you put them under the conditions that they come home in, where you have almost 600 barriers to reentry, two of the largest being employment and housing, I mean, what do we expect? We've set them up for failure. So thank you for talking about the millions they have to spend on reentry and reinvestment.
Right.
And what she said was right. We need to have some accountability for where that $34 million is going, because I don't see it coming to our community.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for what you said. And I agree with everything you're saying. We got to deal with the root. And that's a big part of what I do. And that's why I teach the youth financial literacy so that we can deal with that first, because that's a big piece of what we are missing in the urban communities. We don't, and that's why a lot of the times we go off into the wrong, ways in life. Mr. Winfield said he has to leave in about 10 minutes. So it's a question for him, and I'm going to ask that next. I was told I should ask some of the reporters questions, but there's two different Bens, so I don't know which one is a reporter. So I'm going to read Mr. Ben Lambert's question. He said, for Senator Winfield and Ms. Porter, what do you think, Representative Porter, excuse me, what do you think the likelihood is of passing the PROTECT Act? Do you think there will be sufficient support in the legislature? And if not, what do you think the sticking points will be?
And I was really saying I had to go at 10, but it's okay.
Oh,
no, it's fine. It's fine. So I don't generally deal with, at least for myself, that question of what's likely to happen with the bill, because a lot of that's determined by the work that we put in, right? So you don't put in the work, you don't really champion the bill, it's likely to not go anywhere. The real question is, as we enter into these conversations? Are we listening to people who have opposition, assessing whether or not it's legitimate or not, and the things we can responding to, the things we can't respond to, accepting that they have that position, but figuring out where we get other support. And I think that's where it is. And a lot of the time, look, I'll take you back to the death penalty, because that's one of the tougher bills we did, right? Everybody said it couldn't be done. It was done, and it took a lot of work, a lot of listening to people who you didn't want to listen to, because you said to yourself, they just have the wrong opinion. But it's important, because some of those people moved, and we even moved people who are opposed to the death penalty to absolutely opposed to ending the death penalty to absolutely support the work we were doing. And so I think it's going to matter what kind of work we're doing. And again, it's going to matter the stories that the people who have stories here tell. And so I can't tell you how the advocacy community shows up. I can't tell you how my work connects to other people's work, but I could tell you this: I'm going to be doing the work. And I think if we're all concerned about that, then you can pass this. And I mean, look, it really comes down to a question of who we are. And I think we've got to make sure that we keep reminding not only others, but ourselves that is the question before us, so that people don't spin this into, well, they did this crime or that crime. That's the way that they nitpick at these things. We're not accepting that as a conversation. That's not the framing. And if you want to frame it that way, I understand it, but that's just not how it happens. And all of those things together are going to lead you to an instance in which you are more likely to pass the bill. And at this point, that's all we can say, but that's a lot. And that's important. So that's what I have to give to you. And I'm sorry I have to go, but I have another meeting.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
I have another meeting as well, but I will just chime in total agreement with what Senator Winfield just stated. And I think, at the crux and the core of it, it is truly about education, educating people that don't have this lived experience, educating people who have never had a loved one incarcerated, and really bringing the stats and the data with that education so that they can have a better understanding. We say that knowledge is power. We're going to supply the knowledge, but that's half the truth. The application of knowledge is the other half. So once we give you the knowledge and you've been educated, not to move on that, I mean, it's a moot point. And I'm hoping that with all that COVID has exposed, because all of this stuff has been going on pre-COVID, it's only exacerbated and highlighted what our people and poor people in general have been going through. We have criminalized poverty. So I hope that, what we are seeing and hearing in this season is shocking the conscience of legislators and the country at large, not just Connecticut, because this is a national issue. So it is my hope that this will pass, because it is time. It's always the right time to do the right thing. And it's just time for us to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Clayton, I
And
quickly
I'm
wanted
sorry,
to
real quick,
respond.
because I do have to jump off. I just wanted to offer my condolences. I am extremely, deeply sorry for, what Mom shared, and I thank her for having the intestinal fortitude and the courage to continue to be on these platforms. I know it's not easy, and I just want you to know that I'm sending you so much light and love right now. And if there's anything that I can ever do, even if it's just a listening ear, I want you to know that I'm here, not only in the capacity of Representative Porter, but in the capacity of a mom who has had that experience, and in the capacity of being a woman. So I just wanted to share that before I go, and I want to thank you all for what you're doing, and let's keep doing what we're doing, because I believe in the end we will win.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all the legislators who took the time to come here, because I know you have very busy schedules. So thank you if you have to leave. And I just wanted to respond to a question in the Q&A from Rahisha. She asked, why is solitary confinement continue when we know how harmful it is? And for me, it's very simple. Connecticut's prison population is over 72% Black and brown. In Northern, where they torture people, is over 90% Black and brown. So that's quick and easy. That's why it continues, because it's happening to Black and brown people.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions and your words of encouragement and support. So we're gonna go. I think you touched on Ms. Bivens' question, and then we have Ms. Evelise Correa. She said, "Will there be a push to expand major mental health services beyond Garner CI into other prisons?" She said she knows of an inmate currently in Walker, and they always send him to Gardner before Corrigan or Walker. So if anyone can answer that.
Well, for one thing, I probably can't answer it, the actual question, but we have to look at the fact that many of those people that after they've tortured them in Northern, that's where they end up in Gardner. And so that's where it has become an extension of the hospital medical care. So I don't know if maybe Nisha, you can speak on that.
Sure, I'll definitely jump in. I think, generally speaking, the PROTECT Act is the push for the mental health care of people incarcerated in general, right? Because if people are out of their cells more, they'll have more interaction, which then will create more space for positive modeling and reducing the exacerbation of being locked into a cell. And that environment really inducing mental health conditions. So overall, yes, the PROTECT Act definitely is pushing for more mental health services in general, but we have to address the logistics and the operational restraints that the system in its totality is doing. And then, right, there can be room for specific in terms of, okay, what are we doing with people that are now out of their cells? But it really has to be a procedure step. And right now we're addressing the big major issue, which is that they're locked in the cells. So we got to get them out first. Let's get them out first.
And always thinking that, always keeping in mind, if you cage people, people don't always come in with mental illness, but they will definitely leave out with mental illness. And then they come home and people don't recognize the trauma that they've been through and the torture they've been through. And then they see them acting out in the community and they just look at them like, look at how they're acting. But that's because you have no knowledge of the trauma and the torture that they went through when they was incarcerated.
Correct. So we have, okay, so I touched on that. We have Will from the ACLU Smart Justice. He said, does the oversight part of the bill have protections against retaliation by DOC employees? And that's a big one. I know of that personally. If so, will there be a way for grievances for anyone who feels they've been retaliated against? Before anyone else can answer that, I'm just gonna say that's the big part of why we was speaking of an ombudsman, a community group, or I don't know even know how to community something that's not connected to the administration. And that's grievance procedure is run by the administration, even the grievance officer, the grievance procedure. We spoke with a former ombudsman and someone else the other day, and that's something I spoke about, the grievance procedure in itself. When they got rid of the ombudsman and then they brought in the grievance procedure, this is totally biased, and they all fall in favor of the administration, and all your grievances are said to have no merits. So I even put in a grievance about the grievance procedure, how it need to be, dismantled, and it need to be people who's doesn't have any ties to the administration or the people who are incarcerated. They just want to, some outcomes, and so people can get redress to their issues. So Ms. Barbara can I thought you wanted to.
Yeah, I just want to say, for me, if we don't have independent oversight, it's like putting the fox in front of the hen house and having them be the guard. We certainly can't have that. You're not going to get any great outcomes when you have someone who works for the state be the one to make decisions against what state employees are doing.
Right. And the name is Civilian Review Board, right? Correct, or something to that matter. I actually was watching a live one of these type of things from Jersey, and you know, a brother in this fight, Mr. Justice Roundtree. He's on the Civilian Review Board, and he's like myself, formerly incarcerated, and he was, you know, that's what's something that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So.
If I can just give you a practical example that happened about a month after my son went to Northern, he asked for a hearing on the ticket. When he came in, the hearing officer made it very, very clear that he had already decided what his response was going to be. Mm-hmm. He challenged my son by saying, "Really, you think I'm going to take your word over that of the warden?" Mm-hmm. I've got 3 pages of written documentation on this. And then when he requested an appeal on the hearing, it was the same hearing officer that heard the appeal. So nothing can change.
Mm-hmm. And as long as it's like that, it's going to continue.
Absolutely.
So I hope that answered your question, Will. Mr. I don't know if I'm saying it right, Michelle or Michael, David Michael. He just wanted to say everyone have a great day, and he's looking forward to follow Senator Winfield and Representative Stafstrom's lead on this. So this is Representative Michael, I think, from Stanford. So the questions is bouncing all over the place. So I don't know what's going on, but hopefully.
But it's actually 12 after 10, so this is supposed to end at 10. So
yeah,
I think you're going to have to wrap up the question and answer part.
Absolutely. So with that being said, if there's any further questions that you guys may have, you can actually reach out to us, or you can, you know, check our website, and you can actually be educated on a lot of the questions that you may have just from our website. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone who showed up today, everyone who participated, everyone who just listened and understand. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out, info@stopsolitaryconnecticutct.org. Again, info@stopsolitaryct.org.
Yep. Have a great day.
Bye-bye, everyone.